Going to now open the proceedings. I'd just like to welcome everybody for the 2nd of May 2022 meeting for the annual plan. I've got the wrong thing.
No?
Yeah, I beg your pardon, for the annual plan hearings. Sorry. So we've got so many hearings on the go at the moment, but welcome for the annual plan hearings. Firstly, are there any apologies? We have Terry and Gary online. Apology from Tony.
Tony said he may be online this morning, but he is leaving to go down to Wellington, as I just said, to his brother's event later on in the day. So I think he's watching until about 11 o'clock.
Right.
He mentioned him yesterday, that's when he said he'd come online.
So provisionally for Tony and Ron, do I move them?
Yep.
Ellie, seconded John. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes, carried. Any conference, any items not on the agenda? Is that supposed to be there?
Yeah, there's no items.
Okay, any conflicts of interest? There being none, then I'll just, do we have a report to move?
That is correct, we do.
We have
And
a,
we have Kate available online to speak.
thank you, Kate, appreciate that. So we have a resolution here to accept the report 2.1. Do I have a mover?
I'll move that.
Move John, seconded Murray. Any discussion?
Through the chair, we just want to note that there is another late submission.
Tom Hollins.
Tom Hollins.
Tom
Yeah,
Hollins.
thank you.
So can we just add accept late submitter Tom Hollins to that? Is the mover and seconder happy with that?
Yep.
Excellent. So any further discussion? There being none, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Right, so that moves us straight into the hearings, and I'd firstly like to welcome our first submitter, Catherine Parr-Stephen, submission 9, page 9. Is she here?
Not in Teams.
Okay. So our next submitter, there, we're going to just move straight along, is Joe Mcdonald, who is on Teams, and that's page 167. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Look, I'll be very, very brief on these ones because I know you've got a huge amount of submissions to get through this morning. I note in my submission, I talked to, sort of a general, we can accept that probably council needs the money, so therefore does need to put in sort of parking and ramp fees and wharf fees into places like Pauanui. I guess my point there, though, is the council had an initial service standard for that ramp of it being fully accessible, particularly talking about the Royal Billy Point ramp, that it was fully accessible an hour either side of low tide. Now, currently, that ramp is not accessible an hour either side of low tide. And in fact, in often cases, sort of, 3 or 4 hours either side of low tide, you can't even get a jet ski in there. So on the basis that council is going to charge for it, and I suspect given, the financial status of most councils around New Zealand, you probably will end up resolving to introduce the fees. I just really wanted to point out that council then needs to kind of, up the game in terms of the servicing of that ramp. Pauanui is a really special place. A lot of people go there. A lot of people like me pay a lot of rates down there. And we all want to have the ability to use the point. We want the ability for the Coast Guard to be able to get out and rescue people if they get stuck. And because of all the issues with the sand erosion and the estuary area filling up, it's becoming harder and harder to get the boats in and out.
So does that conclude your submission?
That concludes my submission.
Thank you. That was very concise. So are there any questions of Joe?
Oh, sorry, I can't put my hand up, but it's Gary Gottlieb here. I was just, you mentioned about Christmas time and having 2 collections a week.
Oh, sorry, I did too. Yes, yeah. So one of the things, sorry, my apologies, I'd forgotten about that. I was very focused on the ramp. Look, one of the ways I think council probably could look to save some money, because, in all of this, we're trying to balance the books on all of these things to mitigate any, significant rates increases. it's always baffled me as someone as to why there's 3 rubbish collections in Pauanui and through the Coromandel during the busy holiday periods, and potentially going to 2 would be an option to save some money, albeit I also accept it's possibly because of, how many trucks you use and all that kind of thing. But potentially looking to review the number of collections might be a way that you could save some money on the way through.
Well done, thank you. Gary, did you have any further questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Terry, you're all good?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
All right, there being no further questions, thank you, Joe, appreciate your submission.
Lovely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It's now Joyce. Has Catherine come online at all? No, okay. So Joyce, if you'd like to come forward, please.
I'm with Joyce as well.
I was going to hold my hand.
Both very welcome.
Good morning, councillors and staff. We're here this morning speaking on behalf of Guardians of Parker Bay. For those of you who don't know of us, we are an environment group that has been operating in Tairua for 20 years. Our major focus is on the quality of our estuary and the water quality and the general use and protection of the estuary. So with that in mind, my main focus of our talk is about charging for using the boat ramps. And it's something that we actually are very opposed to. We see boating as an intrinsic part of what happens on the Coromandel, and particularly for us on the east coast. It's a large focus for our town, and we don't see that council charges for parks and reserves, for playgrounds, for libraries. So we don't see why you would single out boat ramps for a special charge for ratepayers. So or for the users of the ramp. I understand there'll still be charged for in general for ratepayers as well. So we'd like to see you drop that policy. I think it's come up a number of times over the years, and I think it's getting seems to be most voters are not keen on that idea. I mean, I can understand on the West Coast here that possibly you get people coming from out of the district using these ramps here. So I can understand why you'd want to charge people to do that. But on the East Coast, nobody's going to haul their boat across the Perpetuity to come and use our boat ramps there. They're used by local people, by batch owners, and by people who are paying for accommodation in Tairua. So they're all contributing in one way or another towards the rating base anyway. So the other problem we have is I think the policy is quite muddled when we're looking at charging boat ramps on one hand and then putting in another ramp at Esplanade Beach, or as we refer to it as Parker Bay, at the same time, but not charging for that ramp. So what's going to happen if the charges go on Wharf Road? Everybody's going to avoid that by coming round to Parker Bay. And we have a real problem with parking there. It is just a chaos at Christmas time when everybody's down here. If everybody drives around to that side, which is only 10 minutes away, and launch their boats from there, then it's going to be mayhem. That area is used by people going to 2 restaurants in the area. It's an area where people swim. There'll be no parking available for any of those people if all the boaties are parking their trailers around that side. In your reserve management general policy, it does say, the Parks and Reserve Management Plan, it says, as a general principle, boat ramps will only be located where there is suitable water access and adequate off-road parking. Well, that just is not the case around where this new ramp is proposed. It's the fishing clubs moved around there, they've added to the congestion that's there, and we don't see providing another ramp here just because the fishing club has moved is a good option. People do launch from there now, and they do launch from the beach, and we can get 6 or 7 boats launching at the same time on the low tide from there. Whereas if you break them all down one ramp, then there's going to be a huge amount of congestion. And I can also see that if there's a choice between paying for a formed ramp and launching from the beach, people are going to make the choice just to launch from the beach. So I don't think that works. It's been thought out very well, and we think it would be very detrimental to all the other users around that area to have another ramp there. It's only 10 minutes to the other one. It's no big drama to launch from Wolf Road side if you need a formed ramp. If you don't, then you can just launch from the sand, and you can do it from the Parker Bay side. So I'm not sure this proposed ramp was put in the policy last year, I gather, but with this new idea of charging, I don't think there's a good mix or good match between the two. So yeah, I'll ask you to save some money. Don't build that ramp, and don't charge us, please, to use our boats, which is what 90% of people in Clara seem to do. Thank you. I've just got a couple of photos here, actually. I'll just pass those around. Tony very kindly did these, of people launching from the beach now that, without any trouble at all. And also, perhaps, Tony, you want to talk to the,
Yeah, sure.
the hazards of having a ramp there and the effect of people coming in.
Yeah, my wife and I, we live up on Backward. We look down on the harbour, including this is, probably can't see it from there, but this is the end of Esplanade Beach at the bottom of the hill. This is where the ramp is being proposed to be built alongside the starting wall of the marina. But what we've been living up on that hill for 20 years, we see the effects. So weather conditions have on movement of sand and all that. And certainly on that part of the beach, whenever there's certain sea conditions, you get sideways wave movement and wind movement right along that top part of the beach. And constantly that part of the road around where the boats enter onto the beach is constantly having to be cleared by debris and sand. And so when you build, if there is a boat ramp built there, you're going to spend a lot of time having to keep that clear. It's going to be the same problem that people presented before, saying about the problems at Royal Billy Point ramp. It's affected very much by weather conditions. So that is, a real concern to us as well. But also on Easter Saturday, there were 7 or 8 boats all just launching straight off the beach. They all worked in together right from first thing in the morning until lunchtime. There was no problems. Everybody got in and out of the water and moved away. So the beach launching works very well for, suitably sized boats. So anyway, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Any questions? Sorry, Ryan.
Are you aware in Whitianga, for instance, that the marina has a boat launching ramp, which they opened something to the public, which I think is about $1,500 a year, and there's people waiting. So it hasn't deterred people from paying to launch their boats. So I think we charge about 100, but there's a waiting list of people who pay a lot more. So I don't think charges actually affect anyone.
So the question was,
The question was, are you aware that people will pay $1,500 a year to launch their boats and they don't worry?
Well, maybe it's a different group of people really. I suspect that there's not a lot of objection. Certainly I have spoken to people who are unhappy about having to charge to launch their boats. The other problem.
Can I ask a second question then? If on a lot of these boat ramps, council put in pontoons and that, which might cost 130, 140,000 a year, do you think that's a fair charge to apportion some of that cost through rates to people who are on, like I look after retirement village, that those people on one person living alone? Do you think it's fair that they pay a portion of maintaining that, or should the user pay as pay it?
Well, I think that there's people who use boat ramps that don't use the library or the playground or parks and reserves. So they're paying for services that they don't get either. It's a bit of a community thing that this is, you know, we expect certain.
No, you answered my question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I sorry.
So if you've got some.
No, I'd just like to add though, that the reality is if people drive down to Perpetuity, Western Beach, and they're faced with paying $15 to put the boat down the ramp or go just to one side and launch off the beach, straight off the beach, they're not going to pay that $15.
That's right.
And in fact, the danger is people on the other side of the harbour, where there is a proper 5-year-old purpose-built ramp to suit all sides of the boat, some of those people will be encouraged to come and launch off the beach rather than pay $15 over there. There is a real risk of that, and there's just not enough room for all that extra activity. So,
I think you summed it up in that
Right.
boats are the appropriate size.
No further questions? Terry and Gary, do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Oh, Terry?
Yeah, thank you. No, thank you, Joyce and Tony, for the words. I can understand the issues over there, and I appreciate them. And I just thank you
Terry,
for
what's your question?
just thanking you for a presentation.
Right, thank you. I've done that already. Thank you, Terry. Okay, there'll be no further comment. Thank you. Right.
Sandra, can I apologise for my lateness, please?
No, it's all right. We're taking into that account.
Thank you.
Problem, that's fine. Just want to remind people that the hearings process is about just asking questions of the submitters and they give their various points of view. So we now have Catherine still not with us?
Catherine's still not with us, but.
So Brian Evanson.
Yes, you
Brian, welcome.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah,
Good morning.
new on sort of thing. How are you going? Thanks for having me at the meeting there. I'm speaking on behalf of the Cave Cruiser, and just feel that, which is a tour boat company from over at the Whitianga, operating from the wharf there. I just feel that the current proposal is quite unfair in targeting the tour and charter boats. I mean, for example, on my numbers for this year, it would lead to a 600% increase in charges. Next year, with internationals returning, it may end up being something like a 2,500 increase, perhaps. The fee is also based on per person, which isn't scaled as per our adult versus children charges are different. So, you know, the percentage of the fee is going to be a much bigger percentage on a child's fare. Whereas in relation to, say, commercial fishing vessels, for example, the increase to them is only going to be 55%. So, and their vessels are much bigger than ours and much more likely to cause more wear and tear to the wharf, etc. They also get the use of free power, which we never use. I do support an increase, however, and I like the idea of having something that is combining the annual fee and a fee per passenger, because then it is coupled to your turnover. So, you know, in that terms, I think it's a good idea, but it needs to maybe look at, there's some other numbers rather than $1 on, $1 off, and scale per person or adults, children. I'd also like to be something looked into the fact of a renewable lease type arrangement for the tour boats that are working from the wharf, so that they have some certainty from year to year. Just think, to recap, we should have a bit more research done into how to pay for the wharves. Again, it is something that is used by all community, and maybe looking at something coupled to fishing boats that go across the wharf. Then that would spread across other areas, and just more consultation so that we have a sustainable increase that will keep tourism coming to the area without overpricing tours and stuff. And those people that come for tours are also contributing to other businesses in the area. Covers pretty much my submission.
Very good, thank you. Anybody have any questions? Maureen?
Brian, you talked about some security of tenure. Do you think that would encourage investment in the sector?
It would just help people to have a safe to have a contingency in their business. You know, if a business goes to sell at the moment, we do worry about, for example, I just purchased the business only 3 years ago, and it was like, well, I wanted to try and get some assurance that if I buy this business, I'm actually going to have a space at the wharf. So it certainly does have some value.
Yep. Good.
Right, any other questions? Terry or Gary? There being none? All those in, oh, sorry, all those in favour. Thank you very much, Brian, appreciate it.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All those in favour. Well, it's still the time. Okay, so we still don't have Catherine with us. So we're now moving on to Ken Hindmarsh. Are you with us, Ken?
Yes, I'm with you. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Rightio. My submission has already been given in, but I've just got a small statement to make in support of that. I'll read it as such. My wife and I have been ratepayers in TCDC for 20 years and residents and business owners in Whitianga for 9 of those years. We have a vested interest in the community and the tourism industry in the region through our boat tours and our involvement in the Whitianga eyesight. We are disappointed that the council seems to consider that in the worst economic environment ever experienced in my time in New Zealand, it is timely to increase costs on businesses that are struggling to survive. We thank the Community Board for supporting the delay in the implementation of this fee so real consultation can take place. The fee came to be a fund for maintenance of the wharf is ill-directed. It is not small, lightweight tour vessels that damage the wharf. New piles recently installed at the wharf have already been heavily impacted and shifted. This was not done by a tour boat. I hope fair and reasonable fees relative to vessel size, length and weight can be agreed on in consultation with all wharf users present, boaties of all use on the wharf. The $2 passenger fee mooted is essence a visitor tax, and wonder why the tour boat companies have been singled out for the implementation of this new local tax. And that's the statement I wish to talk to today. Any questions?
Was Mark Jones with you? I had him linked here. Oh, no, that's just.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you there.
Okay, so we'll just see if there's any questions, Ken. Are there any questions? Ken? No, no, there are no questions, Ken.
Okay, no questions. Thank you very much for your time.
No, I think we understand your concerns, so thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
so
bye.
Mark Jones, is he available, please? Is that Mark? Hello, is Mark Jones available? He's not. Is Cameron Fleming?
Yes, Cameron is.
Cameron, are you available?
Yes, I am.
Right, welcome. We're a bit early, but that's right.
Hello, good morning. As you know, my name's Cameron Fleming and I chair the Otama Ratepayers Association. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the Otama Ratepayers Association submission on the long-term plan review. Otama Ratepayers Association has submitted each year on the request to seal the approximately 500 metres of the Blackjack Road that runs up from Kuatunu. We have once again put in a submission on this with supporting material as follows. The traffic count done recently, which shows a significant increase in the use of the road, the dire strait that the road gets into before it is regraded, and the serious drop-off at various points on the road. All of these make the road very dangerous, particularly when logging is underway. However, rather than repeat our submission, I would like to read an email I received from Chris Severn over the weekend. Chris, as you know, is chair of the Opito Ratepayers Association and has authorised me to read this email today. His email reads as follows. The Opito Ratepayers Association fully endorses the sealing of an extra 300 metres of the Blackjack Road from where the seal ends on the Kuatunu side. This is the minimum we would request from our council. Our community is the largest and most isolated in the North Mercury Bay area. As you are aware, we have a new subdivision, Opito Sands, with 79 new sections. Building is already underway on 12 of these sites and tradesman traffic is increasing. There will be, with Opito Sands fully developed, approximately 340 households, i.e. ratepayers, in Opito Bay. This will put additional pressure on the roading infrastructure and maintenance. Corrugations in the road have become a regular event, especially after heavy rainfall, making travel hard on vehicles and passengers. While we have only approximately 40 permanent residents in Opito Bay, we expect this number to increase as more people look to retire here. We trust you are successful in your submission re the sealing of the Blackjack Road, as our community fully supports you. Now, Chris's email reflects the views of the smaller Otama community. There are approximately 20 permanent residents and 50 households. But both communities urge you to act on this issue. We have also suggested that the plastic rubbish bags be replaced by bins for general waste. Many of our community are not permanent, and so bags are inevitably left out prior to the Tuesday collection day. This leads to a high risk of the bags being attacked by birds and the like. A lot of us had built structures to mitigate against this, but Smart refuses to collect from them. Smart have the technology to take bins as they do it for recyclables. We urge you to extend that program to the general rubbish waste. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any quick moments?
Cameron, are you aware that NZTA in their wisdom reduced council subsidy by about $7.5 million for the next 3 years, and that our roading budget is hence only 2/3 of what it was?
I was not aware of that. And on what basis did they do that?
A whim? No, who knows?
No,
Who knows? We can't answer that question.
They've been, their budget, operational budget's been reduced. So,
Yeah.
so as a consequence, they've had to reduce the allocations to the councils. So
Sounds like we should be making a submission to central government as well then, doesn't it?
Yes. That's the one. And of course, the allocate, we need to be only asking questions. So I have to chastise myself. Thank you, Stephen.
You can answer the question, are they aware? Because I think it's important that when people submit like this, ask me the question, are they aware of what has been happened? I think it's a very valid point. Because I think it helps Cameron understand the predicament we are in, that we can only have 2/3 of the budget for the next 3 years of what we thought we were going to have.
Can I ask a question? Is it Cameron or Stephen?
Cameron.
Cameron, it is Cameron. Oh, I thought
I've got my hand up.
I'm getting hearing aids. Okay, Terry and Gary, did you have any questions at all?
Yeah, I have. Just a comment. Good morning, Cameron. It's Gary Gottlieb here, and nice to see you, and I send my best regards.
Thank you, Gary.
All right, okay. Are you aware, Cameron?
I'm aware of Gary Gottlieb, if that's what you're asking.
Is that good or bad? That's the question.
Thank you so much, appreciate your submission.
No
I-
comment from
I
me.
will follow up with central government on your behalf.
Awesome, thank you, won't make much difference. Okay, we'll move right along to the Tairua Ratepayers and Residents Association. I wonder who that could be. Email would all come up. Joyce, you welcome to join us.
No,
You're fine.
thank you for the very good themselves.
Hi, everybody. My name's Tony Jacobs, and I'm talking on behalf of Tairua Residents and Ratepayers Association about the annual plan. I'd like to introduce Jo Phillips, who's our chairperson on for the ratepayers. She's got the unfortunate job of trying to keep our unruly committee under control, which is a thankless task. But anyway, here's Jo.
Can I just say, I think Ratepayers Association is very important.
Thank you. Look, there was a lot of stuff in our submission that we've got no chance of going through in detail in 5 minutes. So I have tried to summarise it. I'll do my best to keep within the 5 minutes. I'll give Mariana a copy of what I'm going to say. But we tried to pick out the important things. So anyway, yeah, first of all, thanks for giving us the chance to talk on this. Getting on to boat ramps, our association opposes the proposal to charge for boat ramp fees. The boating in Tairua is a really part of the lifestyle there of Tairua. And one of the reasons why a lot of people live or visit there, ramps should be free of charge. In the same way that there's lots of other social amenities in Tairua that people enjoy. Not every single person, but different groups use different parts of those amenities. So that's how we feel about that. On the wharf fees, we support the proposal for charging wharf fees, but for commercial enterprises only, because again, wharfs used recreationally should be enjoyed the same way as boat ramps, in our opinion. If we talk about capital work programme, last year our association supported your proposal to do just the must-do items. We recognised that people were struggling and that we needed to keep rates down. And if we kept it down to must-do items, we could stick to something like a 5% increase. And so we opposed the nice-to-have stuff that was going to cost us, I think, about 10%. I think if we look at the boat ramp, we've already talked about that, but that was definitely identified as a nice-to-have project. And we find it very hard. We understand that in our community, there are a lot of people who think it would be good to have a boat ramp there because they feel more comfortable about going down the boat ramp and launching off the beach, or their boats aren't suitable for launching off the beach. But the fact is, 5 years ago, we did substantial upgrade of the boat ramp in Tairua on the other side of the harbour at Mary's Bay, right by our new wharf. And that was designed specifically to take all sorts and sizes of trailer boats. So I think that should be taken into consideration when you think, is it a must-have or is it a nice-have item? But we do understand some people have been asking for it. We do point out, however, that we are, as I've said before, we're concerned about the need for continual maintenance of a ramp if it's built there, because it will be subjected to the sand and weather conditions, The same as Royal Billy Point, which we see every day. It's got moving sand causing problems there. We also point out, well, basically, you've got a perfectly good ramp if you want to use it already in Tyrone. The next thing I'd like to talk about in capital projects is the Ocean Beach Road curve and channelling. This was recognised by our council 5 years ago as something that really must be done to help protect properties in Ocean Beach Road on the creek side. From water running off on the other side of Ocean Beach Road, where all the sand dunes go along there, they have built in a lot more houses over the last 5 years, and yet that curb and channelling work has still not been done. And it was only going to cost 163,000 5 years ago. Now it's up to 300,000. They're talking about it costing more. So we are really disappointed when councils considering spending 140,000 on other things that they could really put towards this curb and channelling, and yet we understand that council haven't built it because they can't afford to do it. It is a vital thing to do with the ever increasing weather condition changes and extremes that we're going to be hit with. I'd like to talk about footpaths as well, because we would have liked to have seen more money provided for footpaths in Tyrone. It's an important part again of the culture of Tyrone walking, as it is most parts of Coromandel. But there are also footpaths needed in Tyrone, which are vital to keep pedestrians safe. There is an awful situation occurred because NZTA provided a footbridge to help people safely cross over Graham Stream, where it's just a very long, narrow one-way bridge with 70-mile-an-hour traffic going through it. We were thrilled to bits after our association and other groups, Walk Tyrone Group, pushing to get that bridge in and footpaths. Suddenly NZTA out of the blue produced the bridge, and it's great. The tragedy is that in doing so, they've created a serious safety hazard between the footbridge and town, where there is no footpath. People have to walk along the road, and there are big trucks going 70k an hour, and it is extremely dangerous, and really our lives are being put at risk there. We'd like also our association to talk about tsunami warning signs, which should move away from under capital projects, because we believe the responsibility of TCDC is to provide reliable emergency response to protect our communities. To do this, we're convinced that compliant warning sirens are the only reliable method that's currently available. Half of Tyrone is exposed to tsunamis, and reportedly we will only have 45 minutes to warn residents of those areas and evacuate them to home. I read 45 minutes. The reliance of our council on cellular phone messaging is ill-founded. The recent Tongan volcano eruption and the ensuing tsunami warning alert, there were many, when that happened, there were many people who just didn't get any of that messages for many hours afterwards, when it would have been way too late. And a lot of people in reality turn phones off at night. And a lot of people in Tyrone, the elderly people, such as I, we do have problems with hearing, so we don't always hear what's going on. So I think there is a real major flaw in reliance on that sort of technology. We're concerned that the council's predictions on how much a compliant siren would work, would cost. We had investigations of people in Perpetuity indicate that we could get them for $100,000, fully compliant with a backup of battery backup, and everybody there would be one siren is enough to warn all the people in the low-lying areas of Tyler to get the hell out of there as soon as they can. So we do not understand why there is so much resistance for this. We ask our council to please seriously consider the risk that we've all been still exposed to. Matarangi land purchase, we believe that in this instance that we do oppose the council funding the purchase of that land from retained earnings or from rates. We understand the importance of it, but I guess again there is some commercial element if it's run as a golf course. Rate increases. We know council acknowledges people.
You're just about done the time. So I'm just wondering if you wanted to let Joe.
Oh, yeah, that was good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Just like that.
This is now. We note that the council acknowledges that people are struggling with money. We just have trouble understanding probably the rate increases when some projects haven't been completed. Do understand that the first 2 years of rates increases are to get back to budget. But we're just wondering if we can get some assistance really in understanding how this budget works and how the increases work, because some of the capital works haven't been completed. And if we could get somebody to come and talk to us, or perhaps meet with somebody to understand how that works better.
Because it does mine. If you'd like to make a separate request for that, that would be great. But we've noted that from the submission.
Yeah.
Carry on. So are you ready for questions, or have you got much more to present?
Yeah, it's just not, sorry, but I think the council does, or we all need to understand people really are seriously struggling. In Tyler, I know lots of families with the cost of living, and so 8% is going to make yet another burden on them. And I know Hamilton District Council, for instance, have managed to keep their rates down to 5%, and so it is doable.
Thank you. Right, okay.
Thank you. So, thank you very much for listening to us again.
No break for questions. Thank you, Mary.
Are you aware that NZTA and the normal subsidy for footpaths, which was 51%, have removed it all for the next 3 years?
Yes, we are.
You are aware of that? Good.
Absolutely.
So our budget is half effectively.
Yeah, I understand, but I also understand, I think our council has probably cut back into the structure cost by about 40%. Is that about right? Or?
Right, we've got here to answer questions.
Okay, no, sorry. Anyway, we do deal directly with NZTA and government on those issues as well. It's important to understand the seriousness of it.
Thank you. Terry or Gary?
No, thank you. All good. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you both.
We now move to Mark Jones, who's now with us. Mark, welcome.
Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, please present. We can hear you.
Yep. Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Mark Jones. I've got the glass bottom boat up here in Whitianga and just here to discuss the fees and charges for the Whitianga Wharf. I do agree that there has to be an increase, but the way the council are going about it is totally wrong. They keep saying that they're going to discuss with key stakeholders and have a discussion about the rate increase, but this hasn't happened in my 9 years of being with the glass bottom boat. I was actually standing in front of the council 1 year ago and stated the exact thing, and they told me that they were going to review the charges for the commercial wharf and have a key stakeholder meeting, which hasn't happened. TCDC, I do understand that the wharf does cost money to upgrade and look after. And then I got an email on March the 7th from TCDC stating that, and can I quote, "We might be able to get some additional safety work done at the wharf, but this is dependent on contractors and materials available as there is some money remaining in the budget." So they've emailed me 2 months ago saying they've got money in the budget to fix up the wharf, and then there's Troll trying to get more money off us, which I don't know where the money is to be spent. Another thing is just trying to keep it all consistent and fair for all of the boats on the wharf. What they were trying to push over was that it was $2 a customer to come onto the glass bottom boat and all tour boats. And roughly speaking, there's large fishing boats that tie up to the wharf for days, if not hours on end. And roughly speaking, they pay about $2.50 per day, which is obviously roughly one customer walking onto my boat is approximately the same for a 20-metre fishing boat tying up there for 24 hours. I did have a catch up with the community board and councillor Tony Fox, and what he mentioned to me is that he just wants the fees to be fair, which I completely agree with, but obviously it's not. If I get two people walk onto my boat, it's effectively the same as two fishing boats tying up beside me for 48 hours. So what I would like is just to have some consultation done, which you guys keep stating you do, but so far it hasn't been done. Thank you. Any questions?
Okay, are there any questions? No, Mark, points been well made. Thank you very much for submitting.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen Bisley. Eileen, are you with us?
She's coming first and she's running late. But we've got Ben available.
Ben, are you available to present?
I am.
Okay, well, you're welcome. Would you like to do both at the same time? Your name's down twice here.
I'm sorry, my hearing's really, really bad.
I'm just going to sit with Ben, so if you speak to him, I can pass on.
Oh,
Because his hearing is not great.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Absolutely fine. Thank you, Joyce.
Cherry Ladd was actually going, she's the chair of Walk Planner, and she was going to present this submission to you, but she's not available, so Ben has stepped in.
Right, listen, thank you.
Okay, I've got some stuff that just had photocopies, copy for each. Possible, there's 6 copies here.
Okay, Ben, far right.
Okay, my name is Ben Grubb. I'm a committee member of Walk Tyre Society. Walk Tyre Society was formed at the request of council to further a heavy walk that runs right around the heavy estuary. The thought was that instead of council doing it, an incorporated society that was part of the community would take control of the job and get it done. And we did just that. We commissioned a bridge, a single span bridge that was 20 metres in length to span the heavy estuary. And we built a boardwalk of over 100 metres. We negotiated and got consents from TCDC, WRC, DOC, and we negotiated with the golf club to be able to go and run some of that around the golf, a little piece of golf club land. We started off with around about $100,000 that had been promised to council to actually do the job, but by the time we got to actually use it, it was down to 78,000. And we raised the rest of the money. That total job cost $150,000. And it is a real asset for the community. It is something that is a tourism draw card. The information centre presents that to just about everybody that comes to Tyra and say, what shall we do?
So we feel very, very proud of the fact that we achieved that, and we achieved it in a really good budget. Now, admittedly, that was about 5 years ago, and admittedly that we had a fair amount of labour that was for free, but it was still a remarkable achievement that we managed to get that done for $150,000. And we then had a look at a problem that has been forever, which is the Graham Stream Bridge, the single lane bridge there with no pedestrian means of getting across. A real danger. So not just the bridge, but also the distance from that bridge through to town. There's a distance of about 200 metres that really needs to be done. An incredibly dangerous situation. And we've started by negotiating with, not negotiating, but trying to persuade NZTA to do something about it. We've had meetings with them. We've been told that unless a couple of people die there, they're going to do nothing. And then after maybe a couple of years of trying and constantly trying to go and get them to change their mind, suddenly they announced they're putting a bridge in. And the bridge was put in, and it's amazing. But we still had the danger of the distance from that bridge through to town, that 200 metres. And it's incredibly dangerous. About a week ago, I was driving from where I live in Sailor's Grove through into town, and I was following a cement carrier, one of those bulk things that truck and trailer unit, that Arctic unit, following that into town, and it was driving, I don't know, maybe 50, 60 k's along that stretch of road, which is a 70 k stretch, and it passed a group that were walking along the side of the road. There was maybe grandparents, Nana and Papa, plus their daughter pushing the pram, plus a couple of kids, maybe a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, and a dog on a lead. And when the truck passed them, there would be no more than maybe 400 mil of between the edge of the bank and the carriageway. I think that's incredibly dangerous, but they're walking along there, a huge truck is coming up behind them, and they can't see the truck unless they turn around. What happens if the dog suddenly takes fright? What happens if the dog pulls the kid into the path of the vehicle, and so on? This is an ongoing safety issue that has never been addressed, and we're actually looking at trying to address it.
Can I ask? So I just want to ask a question if I may. So I was there at the opening of the bridge, and I could see that you can't really walk on the road. It's just not tenable. And I'm just wondering, has there been any attempt made to negotiate with the landowner, part of which is possibly NZTA with their road reserve, but also that flat ground below the road, which goes right up to the footpath along that 200 metre stretch you're talking about, but just putting crusher dust along there just for a bit of a walk. Safe walking area.
Yeah, the landowner is Graham Turner.
Yeah. And
the experience has never been amazing with Graham Turner, and I'm presuming he'll be wanting money if a pathway was put onto his land. But what we've been chasing.
If I could organise it, would that be acceptable?
Can I just, there are some problems for us if we are only a walkway across private land. We did explore that at one point.
Right.
That we could cross the grants land, which were where the Waikato Regional Council's got their floodplain work there. But there's all kinds of problems for us in terms of public safety, cattle being in the way and so forth. So we kind of abandoned that. But we have certainly said to NZTA, we don't want a great fancy footpath. We just want to get people off the road. And if they could just clear the backberry and rubbish that's there, you could see whether we could put a hogging path or whatever through there. So we're not looking for some fancy pants thing. We just want people off that road.
Okay.
Joyce. It's Gary Gottlieb here. I saw your letter to NZTA. One of your suggestions was that there be a lowered speed limit. I'm talking about being pragmatic in an interim way because nothing's going to happen in the immediate future. What's your view if there was a 30k speed limit over that? In Auckland, we get it just put on us right in the middle city. It's 30k, and it can be done by consultation, and under the Local Government Act, we can do it. How do you feel that would help in the meantime if you had a 30k limit?
We would love it. We've tried very hard with NZTA to get them to review that speed limit, because it's 70 k's at the beginning of our urban area. And they tell us that they have to review the whole of State Highway 25. They can't just do a piece. So we've asked them, can we have a temporary speed limit there? But that seems to be too hard as well. So,
are you aware that had this issue in Manamanapiako and other councils where in the Manamanapiako case, the mayor took the matter into his own hands and just put the main speed limit on?
Yes. We've thought about this.
But Sandra, my understanding is the council has the power, if it does consultation, to come up with a lower speed limit. And
no, no, it's not the case.
Is it actually a state highway road?
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's state highway. Yeah. Look, sorry to interrupt, but we are interested in resolving this. I just wanted to let you know that the council
It's great to
help resolve this.
And we've always said we originally were going to try and build this ourselves. All we wanted was permission. So we're happy to work with NZTA or council, raise some funds if we have to, just to get it done.
Okay, so I'll do some follow-up on this, but so please carry on, Ben.
Okay, speed limits. Speed limits get disobeyed. People drive anyway. So speed limits are a great idea, reducing the speed, but it still doesn't necessarily solve the problem. Really, we need to get people off the road. Now, if you look at that terrain that runs from the bridge through to town, it dives down below the road and it's covered in blackberry and it's covered in kikuyu. And that stuff is now over a metre high. It's actually covering the fence. So nobody knows what's down there and what needs to be done. We can see almost into town, there's a culvert that runs underneath the road, and that obviously needs to be resolved. There's talk about maybe increasing the culvert, which is Ed Varley's suggestion, but it'd be much easier to go and put a short bridge across there, which is probably 3, possibly 4 metres in span, nothing like the 20-metre thing that we achieved. And it's quite conceivable there's going to be a need for a small amount of boardwalk, maybe 20 or 30 metres. And the rest of it, if we could get down and find out what it is, which I think is likely to be easily done by just getting a digger in to smooth out the land and putting in a hogging path. Now, we're getting from NZTA very slow responses to our emails and just sort of diverting us from the middle of this and not really addressing things or only answering part of the things that we're saying. And from TCDC staff, we're getting, we've decided we can't do it. It's too difficult. We're not going to do it, right? And if you have a look at Ed Varley's email that he sent us, he makes the following comment. On page 2, he said $150,000 would be required for footway works on their own, and yet he has no idea what's underneath all that kikuyu. But he's just making a guess that $150,000 would actually go and do this bit of hogging path. Well, for $150,000, we built a bridge and a walkway and created a full pathway all the way around the bridge. And then he goes on to say, estimate additional costs between $250,000 to $450,000 could be incurred in bridging that culvert. Now, I think that that's just nonsense figures. And I think those nonsense figures are trying to scare us off so that we do nothing and nothing gets done. And yet it needs to be done. But one of the things that we would like is for councillors to start directing their staff rather than staff directing what has to be done. I'm sorry to say it so bluntly, but we've had the same situation on the other side.
As you know, the other way, that's an NZTA matter. and staff are trying to do their best to help in a matter which is somebody else's jurisdiction and authority. We have no authority in this regard, so
Yes, I agree with that.
just wanting to be very clear on that, because while our staff might be willing, this is not within their orbit of authority. So I just need to be clear.
Yes, I agree with that. But I'm also saying that if we could get NZTA staff and TCDC staff to sit down and work out how to resolve this problem, then I think it can be done. But what we're getting at the moment is we're getting NZTA just moving us aside, and we're getting TCDC staff to move us aside, and nothing's getting done. And what
Do you want to raise any other matters in the time that you have left with your submission?
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Did you want to raise any other issues? She's shutting me down on that.
Oh, okay. You want me to close?
So, no, you can carry on. Do you have?
I'm just about here. What we're asking is if council can find money.
We're not hearing anything.
Pardon?
There's somebody struggling on there. Could you keep going?
Oh, I'm lost. I'm sorry, I don't hear a whole lot of stuff, so I'm a bit confused. Look, I'll finish off by saying what we would like to see as an immediate thing is for a directive that spraying gets done of this area, so we can see what the thing actually is. And the second thing is a persuasion. Once we can see what the lay of the land is and what the possibilities are for TCDC and NZTA to get together and start talking. Now, we're really keen to be involved in that. I might add that I was the project manager for the Peppy Stream thing, so I know the issue pretty well. I'd be really keen to be sitting down with these people and saying, have a look at the land, see what's there. Now, how can we solve this problem? Because it is a problem that can be solved, but it does require the parties to be interested in trying to solve it.
Thank you, Ben. Money might be the issue. Are there any questions of Ben? Terry or Gary?
Well, all I can say is money is not really the issue if you're just putting up a sign saying 30K. And that's what we as council need to do, is to get along and beat the drum on. It's a irresponsible approach from NZTA not to take
Gary, we weren't talking about the speed limit at that point. Okay, it's all right. Any questions of Ben?
He's got another submission as well of a sign.
I was going to say that it was really interesting that the hopping path on the other side, which really wasn't necessary, was done. And while those workers were doing it, and they were 10 metres away from the carriageway, the 50k speed limit was set in place. There were cones everywhere, and on the other side, where all the danger is, there was absolutely nothing. And those sorts of nonsenses are the things that I'm really talking about.
Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate it. Thanks, Ben. Rightio, Eileen. Please present. Good to see you with us. Page 197. And then we shall conclude the morning tea.
Hello, for those who don't know me, my name is Eileen Bisley, and I am just giving some feedback on the submission. Now, what I wanted to start with was the boat ramp and the boat ramp fees. And I did put in my submission that I felt that at a time when there are financial hardships in Tairua, other projects that do need to be done, that 141,000 could be better spent, where there is real need. I noticed that in the annual plan last year that the Papu boat ramp was clearly identified as a nice to have item and not a must do. I also wonder, given that we already have a boat ramp at Mary's Bay, which can be reached within 10 minutes of anywhere at Tairua, I just wonder, you know, whether we actually do require another one over at Paku, you know, at this stage. Where the boat ramp will be situated, it'll be prone to sand build up there and wind in that part of the Esplanade Beach, and it will require quite a lot of cleaning up, maintenance, and it's sort of at this stage unsure whether the maintenance has been factored in. For example, the pontoon, will there be extra costs, you know, for a pontoon? And with the ramp fees, I wonder whether it will be considered a social amenity for the community or not. And so those were just my thoughts, you know, briefly on the boat ramp. The Matarangi land purchase, I felt that I do not support the wider district being involved in the rate increase, because where we are in Taurua, there are so many issues and projects that are unfinished that need to be attended to, that TCDC could be contributing to, where there is a real need. One of them being, for example, you know, footpaths and the like. So that's just a little bit about my thoughts on the, as a ratepayer on the Matarangi land purchase, if it's going to mean that we incur extra rates, you know, as a wider district to pay for that. With the Capital Works program, I feel that there's been a lot of delay. There's been a lot of delay in the Ocean Beach curbing and channeling, and that we need to have more money that can be put aside for our footpaths, and it has been talked about just a few minutes ago with the walk bridge that we've got that has no footpath on the other side, and we really need to be able to protect our pedestrians from the fast moving traffic. So that's just me before you're asking for your morning tea. So.
No, I've been told that no, we've got a few more. I'm jumping ahead of myself. We're fine, Eileen.
Thank you.
So we'll just ask for any questions of anybody. Anybody have any questions for Eileen? There've been thank you so much for taking the time to come on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We now have Susan Anthony Jacobs.
Yeah.
You look like you're going to read the same three pieces of paper.
Look, folks, we've already covered a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about. I just want to make it very clear though, the stuff we talked about for Taurua Residents and Ratepayers Association is a combined effort from all our committee.
Yeah.
We don't always agree on every specific thing, and but I've done, my wife and I feel very strongly about a few issues, which is why we did our own separate submission, and which is why we're grateful we got a chance to be able to talk about it. And a lot of the things we've already covered, okay? We live happily at Paku Hill. We've lived there for 20 years, and we're really lucky to be able to look down on the harbour, and we see what a fantastically well-used harbour it is. It's a beautiful harbour. There are people swimming in it, walking over it, fishing from it, getting shellfish from it, and of course boating. And it's really enjoyable just to see how much they use it. And certainly on Easter Saturday, it was absolutely alive with people. And there were 7 or 8 boats at a time, for instance, launching their boats off Esplanade Beach at the marina end of that beach. We've already talked about all that. But it was a happy scene. There was no aggro. Everybody was getting in and out. And there were literally hundreds of boats during that day, went in and out without incident. So my wife and I, we just cannot see any justification of spending $140,000 of ratepayers' money when we'd much rather see it spent more effectively on making footpaths safer or doing curbing, channeling, Ocean Beach, whatever. We find that this was definitely identified as a nice to have project. There is a very good we've said before, excellent boat ramp over at Mary's Bay, built at great expense just 5 years ago, that any size trailer boat can get in and out from very conveniently from anywhere in Tauranga. We are very concerned that if boat ramp fees are applied, then everybody's going to opt out of paying their $15 if they can put their boat in off the beach. So that will encourage, we firmly believe, more traffic, more activity in a congested area. And we just don't see why it is necessary to put that boat ramp there. We certainly see very clearly about the massive dynamic effect of sand movement in our harbour, and we clearly see all the waves going sideways up the beach there, smashing into that rock wall where you're going to build the boat ramp alongside, and there's going to be a lot of deposited sand and debris. I guess we've said it all before, but that we just feel very strongly question at times when it is tough for people in Thailand, why we want to keep our rates down.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions? There being none, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Okay. Mark Bevan. Dr. Mark.
Good morning.
Director Association. Hello.
Welcome.
Come on, Nancy.
Good morning, Your Worship and councillors, and thank you for the opportunity. We're here actually to support the preferred option of council, option 1, Matarangi land purchase. And we want to acknowledge the work done by Alan Tiplady on this project, has continued with it since its retirement, and also the awesome support from the community board, Rika and her team, and our local councillors, McLean and Fox. As you're well aware, Your Worship, this has been a long process, and although the option 1 is somewhat different to what had been previously arrived at in the long-term plan, where we had from our small community over 700 submissions supporting the protection of that land, the principle remains the same as for option 1 as it did for the long-term plan, protection of the open space in Matarangi in perpetuity. So we thank TCDC for working with us and getting to this point, and we can put our hands on our hearts with the Matarangi Community Trust and the leadership of Alistair, Matarangi Land Holdings Limited, who currently own the land, the Ratepayers Association, of which I'm chair, and the community in general, overwhelmingly in support of option 1. So we would like to make that point very clear. We didn't get the same level of submissions in the annual plan as we did in the long-term plan, but I think I would be surprised if there wasn't a majority of support in the submissions that came across your table. So we'd be very happy to answer any questions.
Right, yes, but sure. So are there any questions? Terry or Gary? So you mentioned the protection of open space and perpetuity. So you as current owners could do that now, correct?
Well, we're not the owners.
Pardon?
But we are not the owners. But so we would be.
So the current owners of that land could protect the open space value of that area by placing that encumbrance on the title.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, are we just going to switch into your presentation now, Alistair?
I'm very conscious that you have mentioned morning tea 2 or 3 times.
No, seriously, we'll give you whatever time you
But
need.
we're here to answer questions. I think we have presented many times to you in the past. We were very.
We're not truncating it in any way. You can have whatever time you need.
You're not. I was merely making a bit of a joke of your anxiety.
Right, yes, more stake?
We can't emphasise enough that we would absolutely love TCDC to go ahead with their preferred option. It's a tripartite arrangement between the three parties. It doesn't include, but has the support of the ratepayers that we're talking about, Matarangi Community Trust, the current owners of the land, and the TCDC. And it's not just about that covenant in perpetuity. It's about stormwater. It's about a whole lot of historical stuff that has been trawled over time and time again. And I would think, if for no other reason, this is an ideal opportunity to put this issue to bed once and for all.
So having said that, it's a three-way partnership. When you talk TCDC, you are of course talking the ratepayers of the district.
Yep.
Who will be contributing financially to this.
Your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Are you aware?
That was like.
That was a statement. If you answer the question, Your Worship, that was a statement.
That was a question, because he answered it by saying yes.
There was no question mark at the end. I didn't.
I love it. I'm just crazy. I love it.
But
Okay.
the ratepayers need to be reassured that the money that TCDC is putting in is actually purchasing some land on which is a very important infrastructure, i.e. storage units that actually are very important to the community and TCDC.
Yeah.
And I also, we have been operating perfectly under an easement for many years.
Sandra.
Thank you. Oh, question. Right, okay. No, look, it's all right. I'm terribly, being terribly frivolous at the moment, so my apologies for that. Are there any further questions of Alistair or Mark? So thank you for your incredible work over the years, because it has been it has been impressive. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right, so we now have Alistair, Kim Mashman from Untitled Residents. Is he online? Is Kim online?
No, not online.
So, is there anybody else here?
We'll keep tracing it if you would like to take the morning tea or worship.
No one else is here, but. No, that's it. Okay, so we're now going to take a break for morning tea, and we'll reconvene at 11 o'clock for Terry and Gary. So reconvene at 11 o'clock.
Can we bring the community boards forward at all or not?
We most definitely. Oh, we have a question.
Oh, hang on. Oh, question? Who's the question?
And I'm standing in for Kim.
Oh,
okay. So we're not
Carol.
So Terry and Gary, hang in there, because Kim is here being represented by Carol. And so we'll take the last submitter for this section. So Kim, thank you Carol, thank you so much for representing Kim. That's awesome. You have the microphone, Carol. She liked it. It was Carol, wasn't it?
Yes, it was Carol. Carol, you need to unmute, please.
Unmute your microphone, please. Good girl.
Okay. Prior to the annual submissions coming out, we had updated our long-term plan. So we took the top 3 priorities and put them into the annual plan submissions. Number 1 was the improvement of our drinking water supply. We have just been advised that stage 1 has already completed, and that by September, stages 2 and 3 will be completed. So we're very grateful for that. Thank you. Item 2 is the relocation of the signposting for Freedom Campers. Our concerns there is safety. It's right on a blind corner. Traffic coming down into Onimana turns to the right, and often the caravans or camper vans are backing in. They can't be seen until the traffic coming down is right on top. There's been several near misses. So we really would like that looked at, and so either the campus relocated or some better signage for them. And our third one is improved and consistent maintenance of all our parks. We have a very active group of people that go out and look after the dunes, look after the walking tracks, and we need the support of council to maintain the reserves and help us with that. They are very good, but there are a couple of areas that we would like improved support on that, particularly with the mowing when they've just done the weeding. And that is all that we have. The stormwater ponds do contribute to the maintenance, and our top stormwater pond has not been maintained in about 10 years, and it desperately needs it, because this can cause flooding and heavy rain.
That will be noted, Carol, for addressing.
Thank you.
Any other matters you'd like to raise, Carol?
No, not at all.
Okay, then are there any questions of Carol? There being none, thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to represent on behalf of the Untitled Residents and Community Association.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, now that concludes the submissions for this morning's session. And now we will reconvene at 11 o'clock. We can't go and make a special nomination for commissioners unless we indicate that now for Terry and Gary.
Oh, right, sure.
So we'll reconvene at 11 o'clock. Thank you very much, Terry and Gary, and everyone else. Thank you.